When they get to be a certain age, black people get the talk. Maybe it's from their mom or their dad or both, or aunt or uncle, whomever. They get the talk. The young black child, they sit him down and they explain to the black child that white people suck, cops suck, and that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And then usually somebody chimes in with a story. Maybe it's the dad. He said, yeah, I was in a car one time and the cop came up and pulled us out of the car for no reason whatsoever and took me out of jail. Took me to jail. Parentheses. I had a gun on me and they were, they had a warrant for me, but that didn't really matter. On parentheses. So black kids get the talk. It's on Google. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. Everybody's bragging about this talk about how we have to let kids know, black kids know, really kind of give them the finer points of what black on white hostility is all about and how you practice it. White kids aren't getting that talk. If the kids get a talk, it's only the parents reminding the white kids that we're all created in God's image and we're all exactly the same, no matter what bad people like Colin Flaherty may say. Sometimes parents learn they're putting their kids in danger. Maybe a lot of people give parents these videos, these podcasts, my articles, my books, and they say, please, just for the sake of your family, just look at these. Some parents listen, some parents don't. But every day I still see we get videos here, we get stories here from around the country where parents never really had a chance to agree or disagree with what we're talking about here in one way or the other. We heard from one of those parents today. Let's hear a story about Hannah Barron in Lansing, Michigan. Then we're going to hear from her dad. In Lansing, Michigan, another white girl, Hannah Barron, is dead. Her girlfriend's in the hospital, shot as well. A couple of fellas are being wanted for holding the gun.
A double shooting in Lansing has turned into the Lansing Police Department's first murder investigation of 2019.
This comes after one of the women shot on Lansing's southwest side yesterday afternoon died. She has been identified as 19-year-old Hannah Barron of Lansing. The shooting happened in the 3900 block of Burnway Drive just before 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Lansing police say 2 women were shot. Barron died shortly after arriving at the hospital. Right now, a second woman is in stable condition.
We don't want to blame the victim here, but we also are compelled to tell the truth to warn the next Hannah Barron. The people you think you're friends with, the people you might be partying with, getting high with, going to or from with, they're not really into you that much. In fact, a lot of them don't like you. You're not special to them. That's a fact. That's a fact. Hannah Barron waited way too long to learn. When we do these stories, we're not really trying to do, true crime novels here. We're just trying to give the bare bones and just up to the point where we're satisfied that it fits in some kind of pattern of black on white violence, robbery, murder, which this one fits in all 3 categories. So there's lots of details on the crime. Let's hear a few more of the details on exactly what happened to Hannah. Then we're going to hear from her dad in an email. Hannah Rose Barron, 19, and 2 other women went to a location in the Woodside Meadows housing complex. It's a black neighborhood, to sell marijuana wax, said the detective during a warrant hearing. A man who met them there pulled a handgun and fired 1 shot, killing Barron and injuring one of her companions, Salmon said. The 19-year-old woman, a mother of 2, and a 37-year-old woman were with Barron in her vehicle when they met a man at a location in the housing development, and they don't know if the guy knew the woman or not. So this is not the first time we've seen a story like this, right? A white kid goes into the ghetto to buy or sell some drugs. Maybe they feel like they're down with the cause, so the cause is down with them. Maybe they feel they have black friends, black boyfriends, black baby daddies. So they get a pass when they go down into the ghetto, take care of some business. That's a fatal mistake. So this morning I got this email from Mike Barron. The video you made about my daughter, Hannah Barron, Hannah had a mixed child, and we have friends who are black. I know just as many shitty white people as I do blacks. Our family is still dealing with our loss of Hannah. We find this video offensive, and please remove it. You know, when we set out to do this video, in fact, a lot of them don't like you. To do a video to memorialize Hannah or to elevate her, or
you're
to
not
remember
special
her,
to them,
or even to be kind to her. If those things happen along the way, that's
a
fine.
fact. Hannah Barron waited way
but
too
when we do a video
long
like
to learn.
this, it's not about Hannah. It's about the next person. It's about the next Hannah. And all the videos we've done up to this point, we're pointing at Hannah. If only somebody had clued her in that you think you're safe going down into the party with the fellas to sell them some pot products. You're not safe. You're not. They don't care about you. You are a target. And I'm sorry, Mr. Bannon. That's Mr. Barron. That's what we document here, among many other things. I just wish somebody had gotten to you earlier than now, a couple of weeks ago, to let you know exactly what was going on. But you know, it's weird. At the same time that we're talking about Hannah, just a couple days after Hannah, we ran into a kind of a similar case of a white kid who wanted to be a rapper, wanted to be down with the cause, wanted to be part of the hood. He met with the same end. He called somebody up. One of the fellas came to his driveway, delivered some pot. Bing, bam, boom, he's dead. He's dead. Listen to that story, but listen to the end. Listen to the opposite reaction his dad had to his life as compared to the reaction Mike Barron's had to the death of his daughter. Say hello to Alex Tisdale. He called himself Young Beast. He wanted to be a rapper. He wanted to be part of the culture. He wanted to be a hip-hop dude. That's why he felt he could call up one of his fellas by the name of Glover and say, "Hey, my man, come on down my crib. Bring some pot. I will give you some money." The fella said, "I'll be right down." Pulled into his driveway, pulled out a gun, and he shot the young beast dead.
Several friends and family members of the victim were in bond court today and were very emotional when Glover walked through the doors. The judge reminded Glover of his rights and talked him through the bond court process. Half the room was filled with family members and friends of the 17-year-old victim who was found shot to death in his driveway. The judge gave Glover the opportunity to speak, but he did not have anything to say. The victim's mother said she's scared for the safety of her other children, and the father had a message for other parents.
I love my son, and if you love your son, I think that you should get more involved in their lives. Make sure you know exactly where they're at and what they're doing. Monitor their Facebook, and simple things that would have saved my son's life could save yours.
So this is what the father was talking about. Kid's Facebook page is all about the rap, the drugs, the guns, the money, the bitches, the graveyards. Nobody wanted to say anything about how corrosive and destructive that culture is. So nobody's going to give those kids the talk. If anybody needs the talk now, it's these white kids growing up near black people. If you look on television, you'll see that it pretty much goes without saying, all the message we get from TV and radio and newspapers and also talking heads, it is that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. That's why black people are arrested so much. That's why they're in jail. That's why they go to prison. That's why they get convicted. All white racism. And not once does anybody turn around and go, hey, white kids, did you know that black people are not really into you? Yeah, did you know that this black hostility towards white people, it's like a very central and mainstream part of our culture now? I mean, it's easy to see. Easy to see in music, videos. Good Lord, last year Google gave out tens of millions of dollars to the fellas to make videos about how black people are victims of white racism. I'm still waiting for that verse video to come out to look and tell us how many black people work at Google, how many black people work at YouTube. Yet, answer, almost none. And yet Google and YouTube have set themselves up as the arbiters of everything that we should know and do about how to deal with the fellas. Message, talk a good game, but don't do a damn thing. Oh, do less than a damn thing. Don't hire a black person no matter what. That's the message Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, PayPal. That's all the message. That's the message we get from these clowns every day. So when we come in and go, Google and YouTube, I don't agree with those videos you paid millions and millions and millions of dollars for to get people to come down and give white people a message that they're really screwed up and to give black people a message that white people are really screwed up. No, we don't really agree with that. Do you mind if we present a different point of view? Boom, you're off of YouTube. Boom, you're off of Facebook. Boom, you're off of Twitter. Boom, you're off of Patreon. And so now we're building up this enormous level of secrecy about this whole level of black on white violence and racism and hostility. Good Lord, if there's ever been a time where we need to talk, it is now. If there's ever been a time where white kids need to talk, it is now. That's how else could we fight this secrecy? How else can we fight this aggressive ignorance? How can we fight this willful deceit? I mean, we know that the people that work at Google and Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, we know they're all just part of the same hive mind as far as I'm concerned. And we know they say one thing, but they live their lives totally differently. We know they say that they're down with the cause, but are they going to a black church on Sunday? When they hang out with their fellas or their ladies, are they taking them down to downtown Oakland to the newest barbecue joint down there? Are they? No. So they know something's going on, but they just don't have the nerve, the stones, the bravery to admit it. And they kind of like inflict that cowardice on people who watch YouTube and Google and Facebook, and all of a sudden they tell people, if you admit this, if you acknowledge this, if you talk to your kids about it, we are going to brand you as a bad person and run you out of the public square. Because white people do it too. Or, Colin, that's not really happening. Or white people do it too. Or white people deserve it. That's what we hear. That's what too many parents believe. And now we have a young lady by the name of Hannah Barron who's dead, and somehow the people are projecting this onto me, that somehow I am at fault. If I'm at fault for anything, it's because we didn't work hard enough to get this message out to Lansing, Michigan a week before Hannah died. Not one adult, not one friend had the nerve to go up to her and say, Hannah, stay out of that damn ghetto because you're a target like you don't even imagine. Nobody said that. And the only time anybody has anything to say is like Apple said to me last week, Colin, they didn't even tell me this. They just take it down. Colin, we're taking your podcast down. Now, this podcast, you may be hearing it. I'm not sure where you're hearing it. You might be hearing it at my website where I post them, whitegirlbleedalot.com. But this podcast is still available at a lot of places. iHeart, it's called Spreaker.com. There's lots and lots of podcast apps that carry my podcast. You know what? I don't even think I did a little intro to this. This is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Here we talk about black violence and dysfunction and crime wildly out of proportion, and how so many reporters are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. Here we talk about it without racism, without rancor, without apologies. I think that's what, gets people's antenna going when they listen to these podcasts or videos or my books for the first time, because they're so accustomed, when people are talking about this, they're so accustomed to have people fiddle, fart, and fool, to quote my geometry teacher in high school, fiddle, fart, fool around, play silly games, or having so used to people doing that around this whole topic of race and racial violence, that when they find somebody who doesn't want to dress it up, who just wants to speak plainly about it, I mean, they kind of freak. It's kind of jarring to their ears. It's like, wow, we never heard any of this before, Colin. No, we're not. Why do we have to be the ones to apologize? Why do we have to be the ones to dance around it? I'm not the one going around clonking people on the head. You're not clonking people on the head. You're not killing people. Your family's not killing people. And yet we're the ones that are expected to go around and solve the problem. We're the ones expected to go around off, being all nice about it. Boy, there's two really powerful examples of that right now. One just happened in Oakland this week, and another happened in Nashville. Both examples, both nasty bits of business, but both examples, the people who are the victims of this, people who are victims and people who were on the scene, who were kind of close to these crimes, neither case did they give one little damn about the real victim of the crime, and they tried to turn the predators into the victims. Let's give those stories a listen. You movie buffs probably remember the movie Fruitvale Station. It was a movie about how a couple of fellas, one fella in particular, was shot and killed on the BART system near the subway stop, near the train stop, near the BART stop called Fruitvale Station in Oakland. It was generally acknowledged as a masterpiece for exposing this ridiculous level of white on black racism and how white cops are always picking on black people, killing black people for no reason whatsoever. Oh yeah, it was a thing. It was a big thing. The reality is, of course, that white people at the Fruitvale Station are targets of black violence in the station, outside of the station, just like this dude. This dude is I think he's kind of a stringer for the CBS affiliate in the Bay Area. So he was getting off the train in Fruitvale, walking to his home in Oakland at night, thinking, wow, I'm just tiptoeing through the tulips here. This is a very safe community. I know that because all my friends tell me that there is no difference between white crime and black crime, and anybody who notices, well, they've got a big problem. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that's on his Facebook page and Twitter feed after telling people that he was the victim of a robbery that turned out to be a huge kind of robbery spree. But I mean, these stories have so many layers. This story has two layers. One, we have the story of the reporter/producer who was caught up in a black robbery spree, and he just acts like, well, I don't see any pattern here, Colin. Why do you think there's a pattern? But then at the end, let's check out what he says at the end about how to put a little bow on all this stuff.
It was January 2nd when San Leandro officers investigated a robbery at gunpoint at an ATM, and then another and another, not just in San Leandro, but all over the East Bay, Oakland, Hayward, even Pleasanton.
By the end of the month, we had 19 robberies of similar nature. And then by the first week of February, we were up to 22.
This is a still photo from one of the ATM cameras. You can see a man with a gun in his hand. On the left side of the image, another man goes in to steal the still running car of the eventual victim.
Every case, the suspects were masked and had hoodies on, so their identities were unknown.
As the ATM robberies kept ticking up, San Leandro detectives found a slip of paper leading them to a car and put together an operation Wednesday night. But their suspects, 4 in total, weren't long-time sophisticated criminal masterminds, but teenagers, 16 and 17.
This is the type of crime that we see with somebody who's, has some history, who's got a criminal record and, has a experience committing these type of crimes.
The teenagers remain in custody and have confessed to some of the ATM robberies.
These are juveniles. I don't think they really understand what's at stake here.
Okay, this guy's name is Kranz. And so there was a story in the San Francisco paper about this robbery spree and how Kranz went into some detail about what happened to him and how they stole his online skates. Don't do that, people. Anyway, here's how they wrapped up the story in the San Francisco Chronicle. Kranz, the reporter, said what he wants most of the situation, now that he's gotten his belongings back, is to meet the teenagers who committed the crimes. If anything, I want to meet the kids to find out their situation, like, how did you get into this situation where you felt like you needed to do this, ? One of the lieutenants told me that they hope these kids can get the resources that they need to kind of hopefully straighten their lives out. Wow. Marla Newbern used to talk about a book called Pathological Altruism. How people that are killing themselves by trying to be nice in a situation that doesn't call for people being nice. If you are robbed with people carrying a gun, the rest of the community is counting on you to step up and put them away so they don't go around putting that gun in anybody else's face. And all you can do is sit around here and forget all the other victims. Look, listen, if you want to go out and commit suicide in Fruitvale, go ahead. Nobody's going to care. But what about the other victims? What about the victims in the future? You're so worried about getting the kids some resources. You really think that's what it was? You really think that's what it was? Do you suppose the fact that there are so many fools like this guy Brian Krantz out there ready to be in denial, deceit, and delusion about this level of crime and violence, do you think that contributed to the problem at all? If you read the comments to this article at on their website, you will see that anytime anybody says, hey, I think I noticed all the crime in this area is being committed by a bunch of black people, oh no, that person is shunned, scorned. And everybody assures everybody else that no, this is not a black thing. There are lots of bad white people and Samoan people and Hispanic people out there as well. Let's take a look. We already did a story of this one other crime down in Memphis. It just happened just in Nashville a day or two ago. A bunch of the fellas killed a white guy from Pennsylvania. He went down to Nashville to do his country rock dream. But I want you to see the same kind of thing playing out this is the second day story. The second day story answering the question of, wow, we've got 4 or 5 black people going around killing people in Nashville. Does anybody give a damn about that family? No. The family of the dead kid? No. If they did, they wouldn't be saying stuff like they said in this video.
We start tonight with new information on that deadly shooting. News Channel 5's Brandon Marshall spoke with community activists and asked what can be done to stop violent crimes in our city.
5 juveniles charged with murder of an innocent man. The families on both sides of this deadly shooting all emotional. And no one in our community seems to have the best answer on how to help our city's youth.
They're lost. They're crying out for help, and the system is failing us.
Tiffany and her husband, Phil Hawkins, are tired of seeing children in Nashville throw their lives away. On Thursday, 5 juveniles were arrested and charged with homicide in the killing of a former Belmont University student and singer, Kyle Yorlitz. Officials tell us the 2 loaded pistols recovered in the shooting were reported stolen. They were taken from 2 unlocked vehicles. One vehicle was stolen Wednesday, the other stolen last year. It's unclear how the juveniles got both guns in their possession.
It's heart-wrenching. It's very heart-wrenching right now because we know what we need to do. It's not being done. Unless it come to your house you're not being involved.
Hawkins says kids need more love and more restorative justice resources to help them.
These kids go to juvenile overnight, 24 hours. It's not enough. It's not enough. They repeat offenders. We need to do something about that. You got to make tougher laws. It's just what it is.
The mother of 16-year-old Aquarius Wright told News Channel 5 her son was at the Juvenile Justice Center Wednesday night before the shooting for running away. She was asked to pick him up or she would be charged with child neglect.
Like the mother said, she reached out. They sent him home, but yet still he go commit this crime and they still blame her. You know, there's only so much we can do.
Sometimes prayer and condolence to the families, both families, because it's a bad situation.
So now it's all about the kids. Did you notice the moral equivalence between the kids, the victims, and the perp? Oh, I feel sorry for both families. Come on, man. You are making the kids equal to the perp. The kids are victims. Who are they? What are they victims of? Well, they're victims of some kind of white society that didn't give them the resources. Some of you guys may know that I've been collecting first-person accounts, letters from people who have been the victims of black violence, either now or throughout their lives, especially a lot of people who had it growing up, and how this always happened under the gaze of oblivious parents or absent parents or oblivious teachers or oblivious police. Very nasty, nasty business. Lots of bad business out there. Lots of walking wounded, lots of people looking at this narrative of black victimization and going, no, that's the opposite of what really happened to me. But they don't really know, like, they're not alone. They think they might be alone, but they are not. That's what we're going to do with these letters when I put them together in a book. So I got one this morning after somebody went to my Twitter page and said, yeah, Colin, I had a really bad experience. I said, hey, tell me about it. So this is the letter I received. I have to warn you. You know what? Do we ever do this? This letter is graphic. Well, here's the warning. This letter is graphic. So he opens up the letter by telling people that his ancestors came from Massachusetts, from England in 1643. Came to Long Island. They were on Long Island for a long time. Blah, blah, blah. And the family was an abolitionist. They helped slaves escape from southern states. One guy his great-great-great-grandfather was in the Civil War, and my ancestors never owned any slaves, and they fought for the freedoms of black people enslaved in this country. Okay, let's pick up the letter. Whatever colonial honor that my family had was gone by the time I was born in 1973. My father was one of 7 children, an Army engineer during Vietnam. My mother was of Italian heritage. Both parents were messed up in their own way. They both were addicted to this and that, and they were married and divorced twice by the time I was 6. Okay, here's where the letter starts. Really starts. My first experience with black-on-white racism was when I was just 7 years old. I moved with my mother to the north side of town, the black side of town. But at that age, I didn't have a clue about race or racial issues. I was a kid. I used to go to a supermarket across the street from my building because they had animals like goats and cows you could feed and pet. I became fast friends with a group of black kids who lived in the next building over. We hung out all summer. We used to watch Kung Fu theater on Saturday afternoons. You know, the old Kung Fu movies? We used to pretend we were those guys. We were great friends. So one day we were in the parking lot between their buildings and the market. An older black guy came walking up. He was the older brother or uncle of one of the boys. He saw us playing and called the group over. When I came walking over, he told me sharply to stay where I was. I don't know what he said to them, but the next thing that happened was my group of friends walked over to me and proceeded to beat the living hell out of me. Sticks, nunchucks, fists, feet, etc. The guy was laughing and yelling for them to hit me harder. I saw 2 Hispanic women walking through the parking lot. I begged them to help me. They just looked for a moment and kept walking. I finally fought my way free and got home. Never to spend time with those boys again. I was beaten bloody, scratched all over my face, black eye, fat lips, sore ribs, and a twisted ankle. I learned that day I was white and they were black. Several years later, I was sent to a school upstate in Hawthorne, New York for kids with behavioral issues. We lived in cottages. That was in 1984. Almost from minute one, I found myself having to fight. There were a large number of black kids, a medium number of Hispanic kids, and a small number of white kids. I was always being called a cracker, a hunky, a white piece of shit. I was robbed of everything I owned at least 10 times in the first few months. Then one night it got really bad. As we left the mess hall, a guy at the door handed out Snickers bars, one each. As I walked, I suddenly found myself alone. Next thing you know, I'm jumped by 5 or 6 kids from my cottage. They got the Snickers bars. I was so mad I started dropping F-bombs on them. I didn't know the full meaning of what I had said. I just knew enough to know it was to them what hunky was to me. When I got back to the cottage, it was chaos. They had told the head man what I said. He was Jamaican and mean as hell. I only did what I did out of anger, and only did to them what they did to me every day. That didn't matter. From that day on, I had to fight. To school, to chow, from chow, all the time. It took a full year, for me to finally fight off enough guys to be able to be left in relative peace. But I was always reminded from time to time that I was an evil racist who hated black people. During my second and last year there, I was targeted by an older black boy named Troy. He used to beat me up when I first got there. Here's where it gets nasty, people. So one night I woke up to feel my genitals being jiggled. I looked down and it's Troy. He had a razor to the base of my penis. He said, "Get your little white dick hard or I'm going to cut it off." Then he proceeded to suck. When he realized I wasn't getting hard, he flipped me over onto my stomach and proceeded to lick my butt, all the while calling me the most foul white names. I really thought he was going to kill me, or at least cut me really bad. When he left, I must have showered for an hour straight. He smoked cigarettes, and I couldn't get the smell off me no matter how hard I scrubbed. I managed after that to block my window so he couldn't get in. I heard him try many times. 2 times during the day when weekend staff was there, he snuck in and used to threaten me into watching him jerk himself off. He used to say while doing it he loved raping white boys. I knew it was only going to be a matter of time before he tried doing the worst case scenario, but luckily I went home before that happened. In my time upstate, I was stabbed 5 times. I received 3 concussions, a broken rib, numerous black eyes, had the hair pulled out of my head for being blonde and straight, and had my head split open with a large piece of asphalt by a guy named Shavod Jones. I mentioned his name because in the summer of '96, the very day I came home from the hellhole, he shot and paralyzed a rookie police officer, Stephen McDonald. It was in the news many times over the years, and Stephen has been honored several times during his lifetime. In the summer of 1986, I moved back to my old town with my dad. He was drunk all the time, and I was left on my own mostly. The town was really starting to get bad. I lived in a poor white area, but still had to go to school with a lot of black kids. I probably fought every day for the last year of junior high and the first 2 years of high school, and it was always the same situation. A group of black kids thinking either I was the one who hated them, or that I was weak and I wouldn't defend myself, or that they simply wanted what I had. They always jumped you. They never fought one-on-one. By my senior year, 3/4 of the kids in town were afraid of me because I had become so used to fighting 3-4 guys at once and winning. I didn't see it as winning. I saw it as surviving. All through my childhood, I had to listen to black people talk bad about whites. They say they hated white people or what they were going to do to white people. I never in all my years ran into a white person say the same about blacks. All the racism I experienced or witnessed is black on white. For a long time, I had serious issues with being white. I hated my ancestry. I hate it myself. I used to troll the internet when I got my first PC to find anything to make me proud or at least comfortable with who and what I am. What I will say are outright jokes. I've always been a history buff, and some of the stuff on white power is outright bullshit. I couldn't buy into their ideology, but as I got a little older, I found myself becoming more and more proud of who and what I am. It took a long time and a lot of therapy for me to get there. I have post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety due to black racism and violence. I'll end with a story. So last night I had to go to a pizza party for the kid of my girlfriend's co-worker. It was at Sky Zone. She asked me to bring my daughter and nephew, and 3/4 of the place was black. I won't lie, my antennae were up because of that fact alone. Within the first 5 minutes, a black kid larger than my nephew was on the dodgeball court. My nephew tagged him with the ball, so he was out. Before he left the court, he took a ball from another kid and threw it so hard at my nephew, it took him off his feet. Yeah, you could hear the hit over the music, which was very loud. It knocked my 12-year-old nephew out cold. Right in front of me, a group of black kids around 10 years old were laughing and high-fiving it. They loved it. I almost lost it. When the kid who hit my nephew saw me coming, he took off running, and the black kids stopped laughing. That was one of about 15 incidents that happened during that night regarding either my nephew or my 9-year-old daughter. I'm a pretty big guy, 6'1", 275, covered in tats, and I carry myself as a man who has no problem fighting, especially violent black people. To me, most of the black people who act that way are bullies, nothing more. Every time I come walking up and go out of my way, they got out of my way immediately. Every time I made contact, they look away. I refuse to be bullied by blacks. They made my life hell and scarred me forever. And when I see all the anti-white hate out there, or all the talk of giving more to blacks, I get enraged. I feel like we owe them nothing, and it's they who owe us. We gave them freedom we didn't have to, and they thanked us by acting like animals. Thank you for taking the time to read this. I hope it helps some of the people you reach out to. Wow, that's a very brave letter. I got a lot of these letters. We've done podcasts with people who survived similar stories like this. A lot of people don't survive, not in any meaningful way. If I ever get a chance to talk to this guy, maybe I'm going to call him. Maybe we'll do a podcast with him. But if we do, I am going to ask him one question. Why did you stay in that environment at the dodgeball court that you knew was not safe for your nephew and your niece? That's on you. That's on us. I mean, we're the adults. We're in charge. We're the one. Our one job is keeping those kids safe. That's a parent's job too. I don't know why so many parents feel like they can't do that job when they send their kids to a black school and their kids are targeted and the parents are just oblivious. Good Lord, we've seen that so many times. Seen so many kids damaged, just like the guy who wrote me this letter. You want to find a crazy number? Do this number. Okay, like right near my house, there's a school called P.S. DuPont School, starting in, say, 67, 68. Every white kid I know there was a victim of black violence, not unlike we just read here. Of the 15 kids I know that went to that high school, I think only one finished. The other 14 basically are now living a life in the gray zone. The gray zone between, of unemployment, petty crime, drug use, alcoholism, the whole thing, poverty. But when you think of how many of the white kids that were victims of this kind of black and white violence there, then multiply that out over the years that was a high school, and then you multiply that by similar high schools around the country. Number of schools, number of students, Number of years. Multiply 1, 2, 3. That's a big number. That's a number over 1 million people. So many times we've heard the white kids go to the teachers. They go, and now it's the Asian kids too. They go to the teachers, the principal, the black people, and the black principal says, well, you're just going to have to learn how to get along with the fellas and the lovely ladies. Are you doing anything to antagonize them? Because around here, we just don't want to do anything to make the black kids angry. I'll talk to you next time.